Methodology is one of my most favorite aspects in conducting research. I know, I know several of my friends have been asking me what's wrong with me. Huh? I've been asking that question to myself for a while. I have no idea. Anyway, in this particular section, we are going to be looking methodology as a functional aspect for you to work on your thesis. We are not going to go into the depth of research philosophy, ontology, and epistemology. We're just going to see how you can use methodology in conducting your research. For a detailed view on methodology, I would refer you to Easterby Smith 2012 and the works of Glasser and Strauss. Their works were very useful during my thesis. Before going to methodology, I would like to point out to the ontology and epistemology. The reason is the methodology of any research is informed by ontology and epistemology. So, what is ontology? Ontology is the set of assumptions about the nature of reality itself. Ontology is how reality is being viewed by the researcher. You know what ontology in simple words would be like? It's the question if the nature of reality is supposed to be seen as something objective, which is external to the observer, or if reality is a social phenomena that is being constructed and interpreted in the minds of people. One of my good friends used to say ontology is like, does life have a meaning that we work towards, or is the meaning of life something that we construct ourselves? This is quite an important aspect for you to know, because if your ontology is objective, in which you view the reality as external to the observer, then you will choose more of a quantitative method. But when your ontological view is that reality is constructed or interpreted by people, then you'll choose more of a qualitative approach. Looking at epistemology, it's even more interesting. Epistemology focuses on how to know what exists. It looks at how do we know things, how do we discover knowledge, etc. Do we discover knowledge objectively or subjectively? In other words, what the researcher believes about the nature of reality will dictate how the researcher or the student thinks they are to discover knowledge. In simple terms, epistemology is how to know what to know. I know this can be a bit confusing, but it is interesting at the same time. Now, even if you are not sure about ontology and epistemology as a functional aspect for your thesis, as long as you are okay with methodology, it should be fine. So, what is methodology? Methodology is the strategy or a plan linking the methods that you have chosen to the desired outcomes. It is an overarching approach in which the data is collected using specific methods. Let me explain in more detail in the next slide. When you look at methodology, it is having an overall understanding of what it is that you would like to do. What do you want to know? How are you planning to know what you want to know? Which methods are you going to use to know what you want to know? Who are you going to ask to get that knowledge? How many people are you going to be asking? How are you going to look at the validity and the reliability of the tool that you have constructed? A tool can be an interview or it can be a questionnaire. Let me give you an example. What is it that you want to know? This question can be easily addressed by the aim and the research question. Now, how are you planning to know what you want to know? So, this is a decision that is based on the research question. Are you going to look at it qualitatively or quantitatively? In terms of the methods that you're going to be using, that will depend on the second point, if you have chosen a quantitative or a qualitative approach. I'm sure you already know few of the popular quantitative methods for data collection include observation and questioning, whereas some of the popular qualitative tools for collecting data include interview or group discussion. We'll be looking at them in detail later on. Now, target population is who are you going to collect the data from? This will depend on your research question and the aims and objectives. Again, if your research is about, let us say, implementation of Six Sigma or total quality management in a manufacturing industry, so you'll have to collect data from the quality team of that industry. You can contact the managers, you can contact the employees, but you cannot contact students. You cannot knock at the door of common people and then ask them to talk about it. So the target population, who are you going to have within that circle of target population, is something very important. This is a very popular question that students ask: how many people should I have? There are several suggestions from many books. For each question that there is in the questionnaire, there should be 15 respondents. So let us say if you have 20 questions totally in your questionnaire, then you should have approximately 300 useful results. Whereas if you choose interview technique, it is very difficult to conduct interview with 300 participants. So usually it is between 15 to 20 participants, but this is more of a rule of thumb. A better method would be for us to continue interviewing until and unless we reach data saturation. Data saturation means we do not get any new data from the interviews. Everyone's just repeating the same thing. So we say that, okay, you know what, we have achieved data saturation. So you can stop. Most of the qualitative research that I have conducted and that I have been a part of has approximately been 15 to 20 interviews, after which no new data has ever come. Looking at validity, validity allows the student or the researcher to assess the quality of the questionnaire or the interview questions that they have developed. Are they really oriented towards the aim and objective? Are the questions that they have developed, are they relevant to the research question? Is the functional way of looking at validity. And reliability is the measure of how consistent the questionnaire or the interview tool that you have developed is. So in terms of methodology overall, it's quite important that you have an idea about all these aspects. And can you make sure that in your thesis you have included these elements? This particular table, which I developed a few years ago, portrays the most important aspects of quantitative and qualitative approach that you can take. Positivism is mostly related with quantitative, and constructionism is mostly related with a qualitative approach. Now look at what are the aims. So the aim of a quantitative approach is to discover an already existing phenomena. So it is to test a theory that's already there. Whereas in a qualitative approach, it is about creating a new theory or trying to explain a phenomena that is happening. Rather than me explaining the entire table, I would suggest that you pause the video, have a read through all these things, and then you can get back to me with any questions. A good example of a quantitative research would be, let's say, identification of the factors that influence a student to conduct successful research. So the student will have to identify what are the factors, and then they are testing it quantitatively, saying from the literature they identified 20 different factors such as supportive supervisor, prior knowledge, access to library, family support, etc. Let us say they identify 20 factors from the literature, and then they design a questionnaire to test which of these factors are relevant for students in South Africa. And from their analysis, they would be able to say, well, out of the 20 factors, only 7 of them are relevant. This is just a basic example. Now, looking at a qualitative approach, it would be exploring why are these 7 factors that you identified, yeah, why are these important, or how are these factors influencing the students to conduct research successfully. The how and why questions are addressed in qualitative approach. Again, I would strongly recommend you to go through the references that I've given you so that it's easy for you. Just to finish up, my dear people, here are a couple of checklists for you. Pause the video and you can answer all these questions. Is there a rationale for this research? Have you expressed it in your thesis? Is the aim clear and simple? Are the objectives congruent with the aim? Are the objectives functionally step by step leading towards the aim of the research? Are the research questions linked with the aims and objectives? If you are happy with this, then let's go to the second checklist. The methodology that you have chosen, will it be able to answer the research questions? Because if you have used a what, how many, when, who type of questions, then you'll have to choose a quantitative method. Whereas when you are using questions like how or why or explore, etc., then you'll be using a qualitative approach. So will the methodology that you have chosen be able to answer the research questions? Okay, what are the tools that you have chosen for data collection? Is it questionnaire? Is it interview? Is it group discussion? Is it observation? Is it simulation? So what is it? Is that related with the methodology? After collecting data, how are you going to analyze the data? Is it in line with the methodology? And overall, do you really expect that the results that you will get be able to answer the research questions? I would like to conclude this session by pointing out to the trinity of research. If your aims and objectives, research questions, methodology and tools, if they are all congruent with each other, you're doing very good. Some of the references that I used while I was doing my research that I found useful are these books. These are some standard textbooks, and hopefully they'll be quite useful for you as well. Good luck.